Hello, I'm Ed and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast series, Tackling It Together, brought to you by Little Blackbird, where we will be having open, honest and important conversations with some inspirational guests. Hello, welcome to the Little Blackbird podcast, Tackling It Together. So today we're on the farm. My head has gone straight to Tractor Ted. That's what you get when you've got two little ones at home. We're here at a farm in Manly in Cheshire, and we're welcomed by our guest Guy Ford. So Guy and I know each other from the rugby world. We've played together a couple of times.
Yeah, a few times over 10 years probably now, will it? Clearly
a forward. I was clearly a back. But really excited to have this conversation today. Today we're going to get the perspective of a farmer, of a young farmer who's in charge of a pretty big farm, and with that comes responsibility. So we're going to get a perspective of a business owner, a farmer. Farming's very much on the radar at the moment in the industry around. There's been a bit of a spike in terms of poor mental health, so really excited to be here. There's the next guest coming in over on the plane. Yeah, so we're here. It's a beautiful day. We thought we'd get outside and we're going to crack on. So Guy, how's it going?
Yeah, very well. The sun's shining for once.
Sun shining.
So it makes the world better.
How much sunshine have you seen in the past month?
Not a lot since the end of September. It makes it a pretty long winter. But yeah, we're not far from summer.
No. What's it been like as a winter in terms of all the years that you've been farming? How would you rate this winter? It's been horrendously wet.
The wettest one I've known, and was talking to a few farming friends this morning, and some of them who are a lot older than I am have said it's the worst one they've seen in terms of wet.
Yeah.
And running a system that we run outside, it makes it tricky, makes it a challenge.
Yeah.
And we all like challenges.
But you're sick of them now, though.
A little bit.
So just tell us a little bit about the farm, how long you've been here. I know it's a family business, but just give us a bit of an intro into the outfit you've got.
So we farm 500 cows altogether. It's about 600 acres owned, rented. I'm fourth generation, and we've been here for 100 years this year. And I took it on from my old man about 12 years ago, in terms of running the operation, and then bought into the business. That's sort of been 5 years into the planning, and then sort of all went over the line last year, and yeah, that's sort of where we are as a business. It's dairy farming, and then there's a small fishery. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
We've actually figured out that I fished here twice, not knowing that it was your fishery.
I'm just the angry farmer driving up and down the track.
Well, listen, I want to say thanks for taking time out as well, because I know time will be precious when you're on the farm, but you know a little bit about what we do, what I'm trying to do with Little Blackbird. We know from our conversations at the club. But when I said to you a week or so ago, a couple of weeks, about doing this podcast, why did you say, yeah, go on, I'll have a go?
I suppose initially heard your story privately, and then at an event we had at the rugby club.
Yeah.
And I just found it fascinating, for one, inspiring, and thought we in this industry and playing rugby and doing all that are very out, and anyone that knows me would say I'm not backwards in saying anything I think or anything like that, and I just it interested me. It was probably a scratch that I wanted to itch and discuss it, because I would guess I'm the sort of person people would look at and say there's no way he would ever have any issues or anything like that going on. between my ears. Lots of people say there isn't a lot going on between my ears. And yeah, that was probably the thing. And then I heard your first podcast, which was amazing, an amazing story, and yeah, just the interest around the subject and how important it is as well. And the more of us that talk about it, the better for everyone.
You said there's an itch to scratch, and we were just talking before we fired the cameras up, we were talking about the farming industry in particular. And I know since we did our talk, I'm coming back in July to do a talk to you and how many farmers?
There'll probably be 15 businesses, so any number of people. Could be 3 per business. Lots of business owners and lots of employees, colleagues. Yeah, should be here on a sunny day in July.
And it's interesting because we were talking before about cultures, and the stereotype is that the older farmers are the ones that maybe just want to get their head down and do what they've always done, but you told me a few weeks ago that you're starting to see something a little bit different. Just tell us what you're seeing and what you're hearing from the older farmers in the community with regards to the mental health interventions that they want.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I thought as an industry and as people, whether that's male, female, I suppose we're a stoic bunch who get on and do, and whatever the weather, whatever the challenge is, you just grit your teeth, and some days you might not want to do stuff, but you've got to get on and do it because, well, in our case, you've got 500 animals to feed, water, keep alive, and do all that. So you can't shut the door and stay inside. And a lot of these guys would have been doing it for a long time. And we had a group AGM discussing our plan for the year, where we go and visit other people's farms, go on an annual trip to go to other parts of the world to see how other people farm, which are great things just to talk to other farmers and learn lessons. But some of the older ones in the group, when we were discussing what we wanted to do this year, they were the ones who said, I think we should try and get something together about mental well-being, mental health, and make it quite an important topic for us to discuss this year. And for us being grazing farmers to have a topic on that in July, midsummer, height of grazing, probably tells its own story, that everyone in the room, not one person turned around and said, no, that's a waste of time, don't think we need that. Everyone was just thought that's a really good idea and something that we need to look at further as a group of business owners. And immediately we all said, let's get our staff, colleagues involved, because it's something we have to be very aware of as business owners in terms of people we employ and ourselves, but look out for other things when you go on other people's farms, and you can see people twiddling their thumbs in the corner, and it only takes one person to see that to tell someone else that maybe they just want to have a look at that, not getting involved in other people's business, but just maybe you just want to have a look at them, and they'll say no, they do that every day. That's their downtime. They enjoy twiddling their thumbs and sat down looking a bit miserable. Or it might be a case that you've just caught something at the right time. But that was the really interesting thing, was the age demographic of the ones who really drove it, because it's them looking out for the younger ones. And as we said before, the numbers around young people in farming, with the research done around mental issues is frightening, really frightening. And something we have got to do something about. Yeah.
Well, we were talking before, it's been identified from surveys that it's one of the biggest risk factors in terms of the sector, mental health and poor mental health. As a sector, agriculture has been up there in the top 3 for suicide rates for the past couple of decades, I believe. But for you as a young farmer, so you're what, 37?
37, yeah.
Bloody hell. You sure like?
Well.
Is that with VAT as well, or?
A little bit. A little bit. Not 20%. Just.
Well, back to that moment when you're all around, because I would imagine the cultures. I'm from Cumbria, so when I started playing rugby, I was around farmers. My first club captain was a massively well-respected farmer in the town, and I looked up to him and his brother massively. How did that feel for you as a 37-year-old lad looking at your elders say, you know what, we need to do something here, we need to open our minds and take the blinkers off and understand more about this?
It's inspiring. Inspiring might not be the right word, but it certainly triggers something to say, if they can recognise that at this point, it's something talked about to us a lot, but if they can recognise it and see it, it must be. You don't often notice stuff. If you see it every day, you don't notice stuff, do you? Because it just becomes the norm. Whereas for them to see that and it to break the norm, it's got to be an obvious issue. And for them to do it, it's what have us as a younger generation and the next generation below me, what have we got to be concerned about to highlight it? Because if all the ones who we look up to and respect are saying it, well, there's nothing stopping us talking about it more and doing more about it, spending more time talking about it, doing stuff about it, and especially helping. A line with that is people available to employ in the agriculture sector. We're struggling as a whole industry across all sectors. And if we can be shown that we're providing that to counter the long hours and the working on your own a lot, it's got to be good for the industry as a whole.
Well, for you as a young farmer, what's challenging about it at the moment? Because it's on the media a lot around the pressure in farming, but for you on the front line, what's really bloody tough? The perception, the public perception is always a tough one, because it's like anything in the world. The ones who don't like stuff shout the loudest, and the ones who support it just stand in line behind you and get on. When you actually sit back and put numbers to it, the ones who are against it and shout up about it are probably less than 1% of the population, certainly in this part of the world. And so really it's an irrelevance if they stay quiet, but it's the noise around it, and then the follow-up questions from people who support you but then ask questions, which is great and fine, but it's the questions that someone who's doing it every day, it's a nothing thing, but you've got to explain it constantly, and you'll go out for dinner and someone will ask you a question and you'll end up spending all night talking about it, and it's great, and I love talking about it, but it can I can easily see that grinding a lot of people down, and you just don't need it for something you're doing every day, and it's like anything, isn't it? You put a lot of time and effort into something, you don't like to be criticised for it through people who don't necessarily have an understanding of the whole thing, and don't want to listen to an explanation, a fair explanation. But again, it's sort of a bit water off a duck's back to me, that side of it, given the numbers, and when you actually look at the facts side of it. You look at a lot of your friends and colleagues and from being at uni, and you see them having, my social life is not quiet by any stretch, but you see them down in London or whatever, which holds no interest, but they're busy constantly, always got stuff on, and it's 9 to 5, I'm doing a 37-hour week or whatever it is, and that is that, nothing outside of that.
I'm trying to get, we've just taken someone on full-time here, and I'm doing my best once we finish carving in our busiest period, get them down to a 40-hour week.
Right.
And that would be almost unheard of for a full-time employee, certainly on this farm. But it's those long, lonely days within your own thoughts, which can drive people potty. I have plenty of things occupying my thoughts in terms of rugby, which you know all about, and young family and stuff like that. So my mind doesn't wander too much, but it's very easy to see how it can. And if that's all you've got, all you're doing is farming day to day and weekend to weekend, and you don't have anything outside of farming to flick a switch and just to occupy you something else, you could easily see how people would spiral out into a pretty miserable place.
And are you seeing that? Are you seeing that in the industry, that people are struggling or spiralling or burning out?
There's definitely burnout and things like that in the industry, but it goes back to what we were saying before. People would just get on and do.
Yeah.
Because but I would think the employment side of it and why we struggle for people is a lot to do with that. And how we can manage working hours and that side of it to help benefit people's well-being, and is really important.
So that's refreshing, and that's different. What you've just said there about, as a leader, I'm going to work really hard on trying to get my employees down to a 40-hour week. That's pretty unheard of in terms of the culture. Might be that when the weather's good, we push it as much as we can, we get as much out of the circumstances. But for you as a leader of the people that you run, the leader of your family, what does work-life balance look like, sound like, feel like, and what does it mean to you?
I try live off farm at the minute, which is just about to change, and then it might change a little bit, as we discussed. I'm not very good at sitting still and doing a lot, so then you go and find jobs to do, and inevitably jobs mean breaking things, which mean other jobs, and then you'll end up being outside for longer doing stuff. But my work-life balance is very much seasonal, dependent wise. So from end of January till end of May, work is pretty much sole focus, and I know that, and we changed the system to this nearly 10 years ago to make it. I want to know that rather than going milking twice a day all year round, I know that over Christmas and January we won't be milking cows on the farm. Everyone has time off. I force people to have a week off in January. I know it's not a great time of year to go catch sun, but it's just have a rest before the busy period. And I'm explaining to all the guys here that is during February and March we're going to be busy, so the hours might be long, but we'll benefit in the long run. And changed our system again, so we've got more time off come mid-July all the way through to Christmas. We only milk once a day on weekends, so it frees up the rest of the day when the weather's nice and you can actually go and do something. And just little things like that and so my work-life balance I've tried to implement on the others as well. Mine's a bit lopsided with time taken for rugby and here, but my normal day is 5 o'clock here, and I try and be off farm for 5:30, and home, so I can either home or at the rugby club for 5:45. So work-life balance is something in this industry which is we again in the groups we chart it. We it's we do the sort of annual review type things, and you score yourself out of 10 on what your work-life balance is, and the variance in the group is massive. And again, some of the older ones have got it bang on, and some of us haven't quite yet, but we will.
No, you're right, and we were just talking about that then. It's sometimes you've just got to work for those intense periods. We're going away for a few days next week, and I'm ready for just an opportunity to knock the phone off and just totally switch off. And
Yeah. I
don't know about you as a dad, but I really struggle with just being really present with the kids. You know, when you're at home and it's like, right, I know I've said about Ava and Charlie, but at times when he's playing football in the garden, there's times I'm thinking about the garden getting messed up, or emails are flying through. It's really hard to be present.
Yeah, and I think that's your telephone is, you've got to have it because you need it, but there's nothing better than forgetting where it is or losing it. I buried mine by mistake, not on purpose, a couple of years ago, and had no idea where it was for 2 days, and it was brilliant. But it was infuriating to dig out. You could just hear the beep and find my iPhone.
Who found it? A cow in the end, at the bottom of a load of feed.
Being present when they want you is the most important thing. And looking at an email, if someone needs you, they'll phone you, and you can hear the phone ringing, whereas an email can wait. But I've still not learned that. I like to reply. I'm very much well, I've just seen my dad walk down there, and I said to him a couple of hours ago, could you go and do some spraying? And I've got it from him in that he will ask me to do something and he wants it done yesterday. And I'm very much like that in that I want it done. I like things done now. Once I've thought about it, it's probably too late. I'm very much the same with replying to stuff, which has probably opened up a can of worms for people who I haven't replied to.
So, I'm very conscious with these. We talk about the tough times and the challenges, but talking about being present, what's the good side of the farming industry? I mean, look at this. There's nothing better than being outside. For you as a farmer and with a young family, what's the plus points?
99% of it. That you can, because the way I am, the weather gets everyone down in this game, and we bang on about it the whole time, but it's uncontrollable, and I suppose that's something that I don't know if that's from sport or what, is that if something I can't control, I'm trying not to worry about it. You can fix things, the damage that does and whatever, but the positive things about this are the people in it, like-minded people who like to get on and do, and you're, the sun's shining, that's it. You can manage your time. If that's why we've done, like I was saying with the work-life stuff in the summer, if it's a belting day and the guys say, oh, it'd be great to get off farm today. Well, I've manipulated it so we milk once a day on weekends and on Tuesdays and Thursdays from July onwards, so that we can just say, actually, you've worked bloody hard this year. Go, get off farm.
Yeah.
Go and enjoy it. That's why we're in it. We're not in it so we can just really spin the plates for the sake of spinning it and find jobs. Jobs can wait till tomorrow.
So the freedom of it.
Yeah,
there's an element of freedom.
That's massive, and running your own business it can be a massive headache if you want it to be, or if you want to enjoy the challenge of it, have the benefits of it as well, and take the time when you need. Be appreciative that you can take time.
Last couple of things I want to ask. You mentioned the boys there, Pete, Craig, all rugby lads. We met through the rugby club. What do you do to keep level? How do you manage all this stuff? How do you manage those stresses that we might have daily and weekly?
When I was playing rugby, which I suppose I sort of still am, but I'm not. It is the rugby club. I absolutely love it and spend almost all my spare time there. Coaching at the minute, and it's just I suppose a bit of a comfort blanket rather than anything else. I love the social aspect. You could go on a Saturday or Tuesday night, and I'm talking to guys from 18 out of the Colts to 50 or 60 in Nick Joseph's case, or 65 I think he is now. And you're covering all sorts of stuff, and it might just be mindless gossip, but it's just a conversation, a switch off about nothing, but it's stopping you talking about farming or whatever it
Serious
is.
stuff.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm not the serious person at all, but it's key, and I've probably only learnt it in the last couple of years as I've learnt more about life, that is, you understand when people say people retire from sports, and I know this is only amateur sport and stuff, but they retire from sport and then disappear away from that comfort blanket, and you wonder what are they doing to replace that, and you find they're not doing anything, and then there's just a massive void.
Yeah.
And you can easily see how it get into a rut. And so what did I stop playing 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and was very conscious of the fact that farming takes up a lot of your life, not to make it become all your life. And that was a lot of the reason why I went into coaching, and just love the environment of being in a place where you can have a beer, have a chat, and piss about with your mates. That's the key to a lot of things in life, isn't it?
And what have you seen? Because you're a social beast. Rugby does that to you. You know, a big part of it's playing, but it's also socialising off the pitch. We did that talk with the lads. First day of pre-season, there was 80 odd lads in that room. You could have heard a pin drop. What are you seeing and hearing in terms of the lads' communication with each other? Are you seeing that they're being more open, honest, and I don't know, potentially more vulnerable with each other?
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that night, especially with some of the figures and facts that you're naive to when you're 20 and you don't really have an understanding of, and actually what suicide is and what mental health is. You're just a bit happy-go-lucky. You don't have any big life decisions or anything like that, do you? And to hear the silence in the room resonated massively. And one of the things you say is swallow the blue frog, isn't it? Is it blue? Green?
Eat the blue frog,
Eat the blue frog. I've noticed that this year, a lot of them, they come and talk to me because I'm probably quite easy to talk to. But a lot of them will speak, rather than years gone by, it'll just be why aren't I picked? Whereas this year, they'll actually have a conversation about everything. And I think maybe not noticeably, but actually if you think about it, stand back and think about it, I definitely think it's been a massive eye-opener for them, which is all anyone can do, isn't it? Is open people's eyes to things, and everyone's an adult and can make their own decision, but if we can open eyes to this vulnerable age of men, it's vitally important.
And there's a movement, isn't there? there's absolutely a movement. We can talk about the suicide rates and how horrendous they are in the farming industry, but there is a movement. You saying, the older boys saying, we need this. People are prepared to take the blinkers off. The work we are doing, the work with charities such as Looseheads, there's a real movement, and I suppose it's our generations that are having to work a little bit harder to think we've got to get a hold of this. And I spoke personally about losing a pal, and in those tragic moments, it does give you an opportunity to turn a negative into a positive. And what you're talking about there with, you might be watching this thinking, what the hell are they talking about, blue frogs? But it's a technique we talk about in training when we're managing stress, that, you know, when we go into rugby clubs, when we go into work, we have these things on our mind that we have to have the conversation. We want to get some clarity on something, but we put it off, don't we? We think, oh, I'm not going to go and see why I wasn't selected. I'm not going to ask that coach why he constantly puts me on the bench, or I'm not going to go to my manager and have this difficult conversation. We put it off, and when we put it off, it just festers and festers and festers, and then that can affect our mindset. And
small things become big things.
Small things, and what you're seeing is you're maybe hearing more of the lads saying, no, let's have it out. I just want to know this. I want to have that conversation. And I remember Rob Foden, one of the best coaches I ever had. I'd never heard anyone so direct. He came to me with the issues. He was saying, you're on the bench because, one, you're not as good, and he was dead off, as that player, because Faz is amazing. But if you did this, that and that, then we'll be in a position to put you on. Or feel free, go to the second team, lose your paycheck of the week. And I was like, no, incredibly honest. But looking back, as a leadership, what he did was he brought the brute. He had that difficult conversation with me, sat me down, give me praise, give me recognition, but give me the brutal honesty of what I needed to do.
And everyone's always said that about Rob. It was a massive positive of his side. And I think it's the generation of people coming through now are more like our generation in that they want that. They just want honest feedback rather than round wheels saying. And sometimes you just have to say, actually, it's our job to pick the team, and it might be wrong, it might be right, but that's what we think. Or actually, he's just better than you for the job this week. And it's no slight on you, but it's quite hard to accept that as a red-blooded sportsman or woman, that actually someone can be better than you this week. Just take it on the chin and move on to next week. And that's it. It's a really I think that could be really wearing over time, because you can't hear that every week, and it's something I need to get a lot better at in terms of delivery of messages to people. But I like to think that I'm approachable in that side of it, and something that's you're always learning, aren't you? Because there's so many different personalities, and when some need an arm, some need a look. There's one that I can't work out at all, and he knows all too well who he is, and I've played with him for a long time, and I still can't work out how to deliver anything to him. But that's the challenge, isn't it? That's in challenge of all of life. The one really interesting thing, I think, going back to what we were talking about with the thing at the rugby club, is whereas in our era and bygone it, drinking, and that was the focal point, and conversations would happen after drinking, and then you'd wake up the following morning and you might remember it or you might not remember it, and you might feel better or you might feel a bit worse for wear. Whereas now it's a lot less about that, and people are talking anyway without drinking, which I struggle to get my head around a little bit, but it's
me.
It's
drink was always the trigger, the catalyst to an open conversation. But first thing in the morning, when you wake up, you have a choice, don't you?
Yeah.
That choice is, do I blame it on the drink, or do I actually listen to it? And generally, what would we do? Blame it on the drink. Oh, it was just the drink talking. Let's do what we normally do.
Yeah, and worry about it.
Whereas now, what you're saying is probably accountability's gone up. Maybe we don't always need half a dozen pints or half a dozen cans to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's about accountability has gone up. Exactly what you said about older boys saying, you know what, we need to make change here. We need to take the blinkers off.
Yeah.
And when accountability goes up, well, what does that do for the relationships? When we can, you mentioned the boys coming around, when we can have an open conversation and we don't need to be under the influence of drink to do that, what does that do for our relationships?
Well, yeah.
As fellas or groups of mates? Or
it makes the drinking more fun.
We're not stopping the drinking, but it does, for me, there's a real, that shift we were talking about before, that movement, that's because I think accountability has gone up.
Yeah, definitely. And this might be one for an edit to go back to the start as to why I'm doing this. As you've just reminded me that you lost your mate. I lost a really good mate at, when was that? Be 12 years ago.
Right.
From school, living in Hong Kong, was a professional rugby player. Really intelligent bloke, lovely guy. Living in Hong Kong, and then killed himself one day, and that's probably been always in the back of your mind, like you'll know, and all of a sudden one day it'll come to the front of your mind, and then it'll disappear off into the back again, and that's probably, that always resonates with me, that someone that talented and that good a bloke with so many mates, what's in there? And there's a backstory to all of that, in terms of his old man sadly did it as well. But you just always wonder, and we've got a group of, what is it, the seven dwarfs plus one, is we're on a WhatsApp group. We're all at school together, and he was one of our really good mates, and we talk, we have a mindless conversation every day on WhatsApp, pretty much, and that's gone on for since we left school, which was probably before WhatsApp ever existed. But that is actually probably a real reason at the back of my mind that said yes to having this chat with you today. But yeah, God, he was a talented boy. He was a seriously good player. Better bloke than he was a player, but he was a proper rugby player, and had played with all you guys in the England setup now. I was Dylan Hartley from the, right. He played with him, and through the age group stuff, and yeah, just out the blue. One of them. It was, yeah. It's all of Saracen's wins. You'll see Joe Shaw, their assistant coach. He'll always have a seven shirt for Hong Kong Scottish. I think it was Hong Kong Scottish. Shirt with 7 Tate on the back, and have a picture of him everywhere, because they were really good mates out in Hong Kong. Yeah, very sad. Very sad.
It's mad though, isn't it? Because those experiences, you're right, they don't go, they stay with you. You're 12 years, I'm only just had his 2nd year anniversary of losing him, and it does shape you. It does shape you thinking, I know a fine example, we were at that dinner the other night, Dylan Hartley and I was emceeing it, and I looked at a lot of my notes that I'd done previously. I looked at pre-mic, and some of the scripts I wrote, I was quite ashamed looking at them. Thinking of jokes that might be people who are overweight, or people who might not be the sharpest tool in the box. I thought, there's no way my version of me now would deliver that. I'd deliver them, but I'd deliver them about me sometimes. I'll take the brunt of it, because now I think, you don't know what's going on for that person. You don't know if one joke is triggering something from a past experience or anything, and I'm certainly more conscious about what comes out of my mouth and the impact it'll have on people now, and I know you said there you're not much of a reflector, but you are a leader. On the rugby pitch, you're the one that'll carry the ball, you're the one that'll get people round. You've always been a leader on the rugby pitch. You're a leader in your farming community as well, by the things that you're doing and bringing the likes of us in to do talks. So how does that feel for you, knowing that as a leader, that stuff of your past is still embedded and it's still driving the behaviour that people see, either as a coach or as a farmer or as a dad?
Yeah, it's one of those, I suppose, that you learn lessons every day, and you might not think about stuff, but actually all those things are the reason you make decisions you make. And as I said earlier, a lot of my thing, I don't mind making the wrong decision. I'm quite comfortable making the wrong decision, because what's the worst that can happen? But what's the worst that can happen to me? Because I'm more aware of what's the worst. I'm more aware of other people, and I wouldn't want to make a decision that would impact other people. That's the way I try and look at things now. I'd rather have the impact on me than other people, especially in terms of working. We're trying to get down to a 40-hour week. I'm happy them doing that, but I know that I might be able to do a 40-hour practical week outside, but you've still got 25 hours to do in front of a computer, or just thinking and planning and stuff like that. So that's subconsciously you're always thinking about other people rather than yourself, and always like to say yes. I keep going back.
But going back to that work-life balance, what is it that you need to be aware of then? If you know my belief is that I'll take the impact, I'll take some of the pressure, and I'll try and relieve from others around me, what is it that you need to be aware of then in order to keep that balance?
You've got to be aware of yourself and your own area, and eventually something will bite you. But again, you'd rather it bit me than someone else. I can be very blasé about stuff, but I'm pretty conscious of my own. Some people say I'm very conscious of myself, but but yeah, it's something that I do think about. Maybe not give it enough time, but it is there, and but I like seeing other people happy and comfortable in their skin. That makes me tick, and other people enjoying stuff, and that's probably why I really enjoy the coaching side of the rugby. There's nothing more I enjoy now, watching people enjoy winning, playing well, and that side of it. Yeah.
And the club love you being involved, because the sales of Cheshire Cat have probably gone through the bloody roof. It's a nice drop. So the last thing I want to kind of ask you is, we do these at the end of the podcasts, and we call them the little blackbird worms of wisdom. So it's fundamentally advice. So what advice would you give someone who might be in the farming sector? Sometimes maybe what advice would you give to your younger self stepping into the farming world? What's your little worm of wisdom, Guy?
My word of wisdom for people who are in the farming world, who are younger: never say no to getting off farm. Get off farm and do other stuff. The farm won't go anywhere. It'll still be there, and you can say yes. Say yes. What would I say to my younger self? Which I've probably I'm learning. I'm still not very good at it, but I'm learning, is to actually say no to some things, and you don't have to do everything. Learning to say no, I think, is which I'm not very good at, but I am learning, is probably the strongest thing you can do to create more time for yourself and family, in my case. But you've got to learn to say yes to everything first to learn the other way, which is sort of around circles, not saying a lot of advice, but say yes and then learn to say no. Because people will respect you more if you can say no, rather than and do a job properly, or be a good mate, or whatever that is, rather than just saying yes and, as an example, going and having a chat with a mate in a pub, but actually you're the one who's not there. In reality, you're sat at a table having a beer, but you're thinking about other stuff. Sometimes you just got to say, actually, can we do it tomorrow? Can we do it another time? But yeah, is that a worm of wisdom?
That's a cracker. Mate, it's been absolutely class. Thanks for your time.
No, thank you for coming.
Precious. One bit of feedback I will give you: hospitality on the farm has been incredible. As we drove up this morning, we didn't get welcomed by Guy, we got welcomed by Igor, who's one of the cows, who met us square on, and I thought he was going to do a U back in the day and run right at the Vauxhall. But we got a lovely welcome.
Good.
Cheers, pal.
No, thanks for coming. Really enjoyed it.
I hope you enjoyed Tackling It Together, brought to you by Little Blackbird. If you did, then please hit the subscribe button, give us a follow on our socials, Little Blackbird Limited. Also, please give us a like and comments on any thoughts that you may have. Let's get these important topics out there and encourage some meaningful, authentic conversations. See you next time. Cheers, and remember, keep smiling.